Hello, welcome to the Entrepreneurs Network. I'm Rick Anthony. As the leading edge of the 76.5 million baby boomers begin to experience more aches and pains that require intensive and extensive medical treatment, healthcare professionals and technology experts around the country are developing new ways to take care of them, to increase the quality of their care and also decrease the cost. That is by eliminating traditional health long stays in hospitals. That is, people are being cared for at home or in senior living facilities that are much more comfortable, more convenient, and less expensive than a hospital stay. One of the companies in the vanguard of home care technology is Care Technology Solutions, based in Fort Washington, Pennsylvania. With me today is Joe Cellucci, CEO of CTS, Care Technology Solutions. Joe is a serial entrepreneur who has founded other companies, including Enable Consulting, where he is founder and CEO. Joe, welcome to the Entrepreneurs Network.
Thanks for having me, Rick.
Sorry I stumbled over Enable
That's okay,
Consulting.
no problem, no problem. That's perfectly fine.
We'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, sure.
As a matter of fact, we'll get to that now.
Great.
You've been involved in a number of ventures in your career. How many, what types of ventures, what brings you to where you are now, and what is Enable Consulting?
Sure. So I guess I've been described as a habitual entrepreneur, a dozen plus startups.
Habitual?
Habitual.
Okay.
I can't get it out of my system. So, we've covered a whole bunch of different verticals or markets. I've come and delivered solutions into the sports world with sites like Lax Power, the largest site for the sport of lacrosse. We've transitioned into other business areas as well. Consulting's also been a core part of our sort of our makeup. And when I say our makeup, my partners and others that I've worked with over the years, we started Enable about 14 years ago. The whole purpose was to get off the road, get out of the venture world, traveling a lot. And for those that do and haven't, done the West Coast tour, Sand Hill Road, San Francisco, children, family, kind of wanted to stay local. Enable sort of grew out of a consulting business called Cortec Consulting Group that I was part of for a whole number of years that we sold, really focusing on helping companies with business and IT technology-related solutions, advancing their processes, transitioning and changing how they do things through the use of technology. And that's really how I got introduced to this whole healthcare space and starting to see what's transforming there. So I know we'll talk more about that.
What was the genesis of Care Technology Solutions, and what issues or problems does it address?
Sure. So I'd say about 2 or 3 years ago, I was an entrepreneur in residence for an incubator here in the Philadelphia area, and that incubator had a very purpose focus. Healthcare was one of those areas. Met an individual who really had a history in what was and still is telemedicine. We'll talk a little bit more about this as we go forward, but was really trying to change how service was being delivered to those that we can describe them as aging in place, but individuals that were really on an island in many ways, not connected as well as they needed to be into not only their personal support ecosystem, but much more into their healthcare ecosystem, which sort of gave birth to this concept of care technologies and a relationship we started about 1.5 years ago with a firm in the UK that we're now bringing to the States.
They developed the technology?
They built a platform that's really in use in Europe for at least 10,000 patients or participants, depending on the vocabulary, where they're dealing with chronic tracking of disease conditions, like congestive heart failure, for example, or diabetes. It's really bringing it here to the States and making it available and purposed to the U.S. market.
Are they providing the same services there that CTS provides here?
Different. They're providing some of the, what I would call, tracking and management services.
Right.
But what we're introducing here in the States is really a mobile platform that is really designed to get in the hands of these aging in place individuals.
But who's the customer for CTS? Who's the person who purchases your service?
Yeah, so with a lot of the changes that are happening with the Affordable Care Act and in general, the patient itself is becoming much more of a focus for insurers, health systems, advanced care organizations, other new models that are getting introduced. I would describe it as care technology is getting to a patient through one of these organizations that they're servicing.
But there is an intermediary. You're selling to an intermediary. You're selling to an institute, a hospital, senior living facility or so on. You're not selling direct to the user, are you?
Correct, correct. Yeah, and I built in a couple of my startups the business to consumer play. Very difficult. Very difficult to get traction and very difficult to get ramp and stickiness. So what we are looking for are large communities that are attached to a brand, right? And take that brand and leverage that brand to get to that community, like a health system.
Give me an example.
A large hospital or health system,
Okay.
you know, that has a couple of problems that really they're trying to address day in and day out. One is the problem of dealing with the patient that leaves the hospital, right? Leaves the institution and making sure that that patient does not return to the institution by giving them the service they need once they get home is one good example. Long-term care facilities that have extended support models where they're getting it out of the facility and now trying to take it to the home because they realize that they can expand their top line by delivering services that they deliver within their facility to an individual at home.
You mentioned the Affordable Care Act. How has that created or expanded the market for CTS and other providers of home care technology? And within that, the hospital readmissions reduction program, how has that also touched on what you do?
Yeah, so you know there's a good part to the Affordable Care Act as it relates to changing some models. There's a lot of difficulty, and I think we've all heard about the thickness of that particular act and what's in there. But what has come out are some general nuggets. One nugget is really how care is being paid for, right? So there's this concept of bundled payment is a good example, which is really being able to manage a participant or a patient on some fixed monthly fee. Now, given that fixed monthly fee to potentially a provider like an advanced care organization or a health system that has an advanced care organization, they're going to want to provide the best level of service that they can provide. And technology is making a change and making an impact, adding scale and adding availability and access to things like a patient getting a weight or a blood pressure reading on a daily basis, right? You can do that now with technology in the home.
Right.
You can now process that data and generate alerts automatically.
Yes.
In the past, that patient would have to be taken to a doctor's office for a reading and then for some action. So, you know, those types of transitions. The other things that are occurring as well as this whole, and you mentioned the problem of readmission. You know,
Big problem.
Big problem, right? And before, readmission was looked at from a health system's perspective as a good thing because it was a fee-for-service event. Someone comes back into an emergency room to be treated for something. Again, they could charge an insurance company or they can charge Medicare, for example. Guess what? That's changing dramatically under the Affordable Care Act. The idea is fix it right and fix it once, right? And get it out and get that patient back out into the community and avoid the rehospitalization. So again, how do you deal with managing that to ensure the patient? And really what we're seeing and really where technology plays a very, very important role is the patient themselves tend not to be as compliant as you would hope. Right? Are they taking their medication?
Right.
More often than not,
Always a problem.
that's a situation that causes a readmission. 911 is the easiest call to make.
So some of the services that CTS provides sound like services that are provided by a number of other home care companies.
Yep.
The monitoring, the alerts, the reporting, the notification of caregivers, whether family or professionals. What's the differentiator?
Yeah, it's a real good question, and maybe I wasn't as clear in sort of the setup for who we are, and let me try to clarify that a little bit more. Healthcare and healthcare technology itself is a very crowded space.
Yes.
And, we could go down the litany of big players, small players.
I see them all the time.
Exactly, right? There's this yet another new funding event that's occurred for a healthcare company or healthcare technology company. What we've discovered is in this chaos the opportunity to connect and to bring together disparate pieces through this platform that I mentioned at the start. And we are bringing in from the UK, which has done a wonderful job at a couple of key elements that are very, very different. And I'm not going to go into and I'm very quick to go there into the technology.
You techie guys,
right?
you lose me all the
Yeah,
time.
I'm going to stay away from that.
Stay away from it.
Right, but what I will describe is
Talk about the benefits.
the benefits of orchestrating care.
Yeah.
And that's where we're different.
Of orchestrating care.
Correct. Specifically, I'll give you a great example. Let me use a real world example.
Okay.
The Apple Watch, right, or the Fitbit, right? Everyone has the hype of and are driven, and me included. I've got one sitting here on me, motivated to make my 10,000 steps. I also now have a heart rate monitor built into this device. It's delivering real-time status on what's going on with me. Now imagine if I'm a congestive heart failure patient.
All right.
Important thing, get my exercise. One, am I getting my 5 miles or 10,000 steps a day? Two, is my heart doing what it's supposed to do? Is it naturally increasing during work and going back to a good steady state and resting heart rate? Well, most of the time today, a healthcare professional doesn't have access to that information. They actually get that information when it's too late.
Right.
With our platform, we're able to take those readings and make them actionable through what we call our workflow engine. And that is defining what triggers should be generated to alert a healthcare professional that either something good is happening or potentially, more importantly, raise the red flag to say something bad is happening, so they can immediately sort of intercept that issue and take some ownership and control and touch the patient.
So your software has algorithms that take in the data and then make the necessary correlations, connections, and so on to make it meaningful?
Making it meaningful, but meaningful is left in the hands of the healthcare professional.
Okay.
We're providing the tool set to allow them to do that. One of the things that's very important in the space that we're in is to concentrate on the fact that we're a software as a service provider of healthcare technology, a platform. We're not a healthcare company, right? So we're providing the tools to those that can define this in a very, very, very easy to do fashion with our technology.
But in the literature I read, it was emphasized that, and I think the word was configure, you can customize each one of these applications for each individual patient. Is that correct?
You sure can.
Without having to rewrite code and
Correct.
get into a lot of technical stuff.
And that's one of the things, and we describe it this way. The world of the competitive landscape today, there are big players. Philips, for example, a very, very large. GE Healthcare, a very large player. They've tended to build their solutions, which were very tied to their specific products. And if you had to make changes to those products, you had to wait for GE to release its next version. What we're suggesting, what we're saying is, those products provide a lot of good data, but there isn't a tool on the market as flexible as Care Technologies to take that data, convert it, and make it actionable so you can perform.
How does the pricing compare to the major brands?
Well, as it relates to an access charge in the model we charge, it's a software as a service play. So it's a per month, per individual, or per patient or participant. It's not the big licensing fee up front. So it scales really well. So if you've got a small population, you may be a small home health care company that has 50 patients that you want to provide enhanced service to. So for example, you might want to take each one of their primary care physicians on a weekly basis, send them a report of activity. We can scale down to that level and allow them to build that into their pricing model without them acquiring software or hardware.
You've been rolling this out, and you mentioned a number of prospective users, buyers.
Sure.
Initially, who's the target audience? What is the target market?
So there's
hospitals, nursing homes, what?
So it's really there's two segments to our business model in terms of where we're targeting. First is the market of home health aides. In particular, that market, and if anyone has dealt with someone aging in place, as we describe it, they've probably gotten service from one of these companies. Someone to come in, tidy up, to a more skilled healthcare professional that comes in on a daily basis. The providers of those services are really looking and in need of ways to track, manage, and get data at the point of service, because many are based on paper today, journals that live in the home. So observations that occur with one of these professionals' visit, they often get buried in a journal that may only be reviewed monthly. So we can put a mobile application in the hands in the form of a tablet or a mobile device for those home health workers to walk into a home and be much more engaged. One. The second market are really these health systems, these changed models that resulted from the Affordable Care Act. Now, I talked about the ACO model, where there are large patient populations. It's also called population management, where they've got to, for a fixed fee, manage each one of their patients. We're putting devices in homes, for example, a tablet that do things like video and voice. So rather than calling 911, a patient has the ability to ring up a care manager or a nurse to say, hey, I'm feeling a little bit funny today. Well, did you take your medication? Oh, I forgot, right? Heading off a readmission, heading off a 911 call, and heading off a very expensive insurance.
That really creates an opportunity for companies like yours to become partners, not just vendors, but partners with physicians, hospitals, particularly under bundled payment.
Yes.
So if a physician or a hospital receives, I'm making this up, $18,000 for that particular patient, and as I understand it, if they go over the $18,000 rather, they owe the system money. They owe Medicare money. If they're able to save money, come in under $18,000, they save whatever the savings.
They benefit, you got it.
The benefit. But in all probability, they can't do that without somebody like you to help them monitor, manage, control, mitigate some of the risk.
Correct. You got it.
Right?
Exactly. So is
that a new development?
I don't know if it's necessarily a new development.
This partnership, I mean?
Well, I think
rather than being a vendor?
Yes, I think that's really one of the critical changes, because we're in one of our early implementations right now, and that has truly become a partnership. They have, and I shall remain nameless, larger vendor that had come in and sold them on a management solution to manage their aging in place population. And it was at what I would call a much more of a traditional implementation. Came in, here's the product, let's go through some work sessions and figure out how we should set it up for you. And they left. And they didn't quite get the benefit. We, on the other hand, are very much embedded in their thinking. So we're giving them roadmaps, we're giving them ideas, and then we're giving them a platform with our solution to configure it to match their specific and also differentiated capability. And that's what's really important. What we're not trying to be is the one-size-fits-all sort of solution, right? We've got to have, with healthcare in particular, all my years of doing this in information technology, right? You've got to have that flexibility to adjust and give them processes that suit their business model, and that's what we can do.
How do you deal with this situation? Most of the home aides, I guess, or care aides, are not technology savvy, but they're the ones you're relying on to enter the data in many instances, right? How do you train them? How do you make it so easy for them to enter data? And then you have the other problem of the turnover among these people, personnel, who constantly, therefore, have to be introduced to, trained in, and hopefully made to understand the value makes their life easier.
Yeah, sure.
How do you deal with all of that?
So I think
it's the human side of this.
Yeah, very much so. I think, well, when you look at the health aid, the certified nursing assistant marketplace, right? The demographic is changing dramatically, right? This is becoming more and more an entry into a path to get into nursing, right? As healthcare is growing so rapidly. And so you've got that one constituent or one user group. The other user group, again, are familiar with the world of apps, right? Thank God for the App Store and the Android, Play Store. Right? That has gotten us all familiar with downloading an app and pushing, right? And making it as convenient as possible. So when you look at the application we built, we've simplified the process. So what they're getting by default are forms, or what we call the care plans, that they have to perform. And these are all based on yes or no types of questions. Did you do this or did you do that? Have you performed this or performed that? Right? That's the types of, I think, easy to use mobility that we're trying to introduce with our solution set. And we've gotten pretty positive reaction for everyone we showed it to.
Does anybody, do you or anyone else in the field, offer incentives either to the health aides or to the patient incentives to do what they should be doing,
They're
to comply with the protocols that are necessary?
Well, I think it's less incentive, more you're going to get paid or not, right? In these hourly situations that we've seen, where
Yeah,
you're being governed by the hourly rate
Yes.
and the expectation to perform certain activity as one of these health aides. And what we're also finding in that the way they're performing these activities today is a lot of it is done on spreadsheets and
Yes.
in documents on a laptop.
It's burdensome.
It's very burdensome,
Yeah.
and they very often don't take care of it at the point of care. They may take care of it and accumulate it and submit it later.
Exactly.
And you lose that just in time.
Yes.
One of the biggest concerns that we've heard as it relates to this readmissions problem, because remember, the home health aide is in the home. They're seeing, one of us every day, and there can be a natural and quick change. I could be drinking a lot today, on Tuesday, and on Wednesday, I don't want to drink or eat. And what's happened is those observations, which is a critical readmission element,
yes,
right,
yes.
is not being communicated at the point in time it's observed.
Is this real time?
This is very much real time. So when for example, a home health aide goes into the home,
Yes.
they check in when they're there,
Right.
so we know geolocation where they are, so we know exactly where they are. Also, while they're traveling, through some of our telephony solutions, we can check in with them to make sure they're going to arrive on time, and if they're not, let the patient know they're going to be running late. And when they're there, the actions that they're performing. Now, I often get asked the question, suppose there's no connection, suppose there's no
Yes.
network, suppose they're in a, as I call it, a bunker, right, in a building in the city that has no communication.
Could be anywhere in Wayne, for that matter.
That's true.
Or Radnor.
Depending on the provider.
That's right.
That's certainly true. But what we do have is, everything can be performed offline as well. So whenever they are observing, it's all happening real time. The next time they get connected to the network,
Yeah.
it will automatically move that
Okay.
to the provider.
But it is real time,
Yes.
so that if there are certain triggers
Yep.
that would suggest that somebody should be looking into this, there is something that isn't right, how quickly does that information go to the physician, to a caregiver, a medical person?
Yeah, it can be as real time as
Yeah.
we want it to be. So what we have is this concept called the health desk, right? It's kind of a spin on the term help desk,
Yeah.
right? And that we've been using, and that is in many of these provider organizations, they've got a call center.
Yes.
They have nurses. They have
Right.
some level of triage that occurs. And when we go into these facilities, what we see very often is they tend to be monitoring situations, not managing the situation. They're looking for a red indicator that would cause them to do something manually. Now it's time to call the cardiologist
Yeah.
because blood pressure is not where it needs to be. We change that dramatically. Not only do we have the red, yellow, green, right, the good to the bad type of indicators, behind the scenes,
Yep.
this rules engine that we have can automate that process. The red is indicated, an automatic alert can be issued to a doctor, a text message, a phone call, an email with the appropriate information so that the physician is ready to service that patient with a report so they know exactly what's going on. We believe that's the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
And that's a connected model that's very different than what's going on today.
A couple of things. You're not quite a startup because you have revenue,
Right.
all right? So
That's
that
correct.
takes you out of that category. You're still looking for funding,
Sure.
but you have revenue and you've got some other things in the pipe, I assume,
We do.
that look pretty good.
Yes.
The market you're serving, I don't have to tell you, is growing at what rate? I read, and I wrote this down, there are 36 million plus people, most of them 65 and older, who have at least one chronic condition, diabetes, hypertension, COPD, heart, so on. It's a huge market that's just getting bigger, and that's just this market in the U.S.
Correct.
I'm assuming that you will be going off, you're already,
Yeah.
the technology comes from
Yeah.
the UK, but there are other opportunities around the world.
Sure.
We'll come back to that in a minute. At any rate, so the market is growing leaps and bounds. Everybody's splashing around in it, trying to figure out how they can make money.
Yep.
Once again, what's your plan to become a dominant force, a dominant brand in a crowded space?
Yeah, exactly. Well, the question is, how do you become a brand versus how do you become part of a brand?
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're dealing with day in and
Okay.
day out. And that is, these brands, and it's no different than in the app space, right? Google comes along and finds a cool app and grabs it. What we're looking to do is really differentiate, create disruption,
Yes.
and create brand partnership opportunities.
Okay.
As a result, okay, and that's to touch that many and to build scale in sales to kind of reach out to that many. What we're finding is there are a number of mid-sized direct customers that are in our pipeline that great opportunity for us, right? And as you said, we're already in revenue development. Actually, we've created a revenue opportunity very quickly. They also, as their networks build, and as we get introduced to other partners, we're actually having some interesting conversations right out of the gate with the platform approach we're taking,
Yeah.
the devices that we're putting in the homes.
So are you receiving more receptivity from the market than you might have expected, say, well, certainly before the Affordable Care Act, but even since the Affordable Care Act, within the past couple of years anyway, with these other new regulations that are piling on, like bundle payment, like the penalties for readmission and so on, all of those, I assume, are driving or creating high levels of anxiety.
Yeah, they are.
So that you should be welcomed in. And you said that people seem to get it right away?
They do. And what's interesting, and if we go back 24 months, when we really started this idea and we started talking through it, we had some interesting conversations, and it was more kick the tire scenarios.
Yeah.
Now we get involved, and they're engaged. And the way they're engaged, and I tell this, we build all this, is a great story. The technology guys going wild, right? Build everything that's possible, right? We're always in the art of the possible. And the reality is, in our initial sales calls, in our initial meetings, and our initial customers, it ends up being something very simple. Right? How do we communicate better with our patients? How can we head off the readmission problem and prevent them from dialing 911? Oh, you have a video capability, which we do, where we can video each other, a nurse can video to a patient. And we hear these stories, and it amazes me, right? Someone who's aged in place and is out of contact, and it's almost a solitary type of situation, that just the event of a video call will get, Mary out of bed and have her ready for the call. She'll shower and dress for that call.
The socializing.
The socializing aspect
very
of it,
important.
which is very, very important. So while we have all of these capabilities to do all this wonderful stuff, where we're actually penetrating in this bundled payment sort of readmission problem right now. Bundled payments maturing. The readmission problem is in communication, better communication.
It's fascinating. The opportunities are limitless, I guess. Well, largely because, well, a couple of things. One, the technology, clearly, because it keeps getting better and better and cheaper, and more accessible. The other is the market is growing and is predictable. You know how big it's going to be next year, the year after that. And people are getting older and need the kind, and people prefer to recover or be treated at home, aging in place, which is becoming. Well,
what we see in a number of our players that have built facilities over the years, right? More buildings, more rooms. Now it's less buildings, more in neighborhood, more social.
It's the old Beacon Hill model from years ago. Good to see you, Joe.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for stopping by.
Thanks a lot.
My guest today has been Joe Cellucci, who is the CEO of Care Technology Solutions, a pioneer, well, if not a pioneer, certainly in the lead on home care solutions. This is the Entrepreneurs Network. I am Rick Anthony. Take very good care of yourselves